friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works workshop. Got an Eastman mandolin in for a setup. I would call this pretty much a full meal deal, kind of whatever it needs. You know, on first glance it doesn't need very much. It's got the smaller frets in it, which I like. It's got the radiused fingerboard, which I don't like. But everybody likes something different, you know. There's a lot of people that love the radius fingerboard. I don't find it very helpful for me. You know, looking at the mandolin in overall, it's pretty darn good, really. I don't see much wrong with the setup. But there is one thing that I don't think we can really fix that's kind of a problem with the setup. It doesn't have a very tall bridge. If you look here, this angle, it might look like that's quite a bit, but that's not very much for a mandolin. This is a pretty short bridge. So basically the neck angle, and I'm exaggerating, but the neck angle is a little more flat. It should be a little bit more like that. Not much we can do about that. The only thing you could really do about that would be to put a wedge under the fingerboard to lift the bridge a little higher. That would give you a little more down pressure on the top, give you a little more volume. As it is, they've got the saddle all the way down. Now the bridge feet are fairly thick on this, so we can take a little bit off there. There's really not much more adjustment to get the strings any lower. The strings are, I wouldn't call them crazy high, but they're high. So like it won't hold this pick back here. Here I'm even at the 7th fret and it's not holding a pick. It's fairly high action. That's probably the biggest problem with it. But like I said, the problem with that is really the neck angle. In my opinion, the neck angle is just a little shallow on this mandolin for whatever reason. I'll do what I can. Probably most of it's going to be spent around thinning out the feet on this bridge so that I can adjust the saddle up and down a little bit more. I'll probably put a deer antler saddle on this because this particular saddle is already broke. It's got a crack in it right through here. The only other thing I don't care for too much is that this has the larger posts. I'm not a fan of the larger posts either. They've kind of gone to that a lot lately, especially on the mass-produced mandolins, and that larger post is pretty common. Didn't used to be. I'm not a big fan of it because, you know, you want to try to keep your saddle dainty and small, and when you put that great big hole through that little small saddle, well, then you get things like this. This is cracked right here. It weakens the ends, you know. We'll do what we can with what we have to work with, and we'll see what we can do to improve this. So here's just a little bit of a before, so you have something to compare it to. Pretty good sound. I don't know, I'm hearing some weird noises there. Maybe one of the strings slipped. I'm going to check the tuning again. I can tell it's just a little stiff to play. It's a little high. These strings make it sound a little bit more pingy, tinny. I don't know which strings are on here. These could be the silk and steel, I guess, but I don't think they are. They look to me to be some sort of a nickel string. They might be the Gibson's Monell strings or something. I'm not really sure, but they're not my favorite. They're not terrible. They're just a little bit wiry sounding. Some of it sounds pretty good, and some things you play doesn't really ring out right. Anyway, that gives you kind of a before sound. I'm hoping that we can make it a little bit more of a woody sound, a little more, even a little more volume, a little more punch. We'll see. After I took the strings off this, I looked down the fingerboard to just see how much underbow there is, and there's a lot. You know, I was actually looking to see if the neck was straight, of course, but on this side right through here, right in this area here on the treble side, it's a significant underbow. Let's see how much. Can I slide a pick under there? Almost can get a 40 thousandths pick under there. Not quite going, but it's real close to going. This is a little bit thinner. Yeah, that goes under there, no problem. And this is kind of a medium thickness pick, so let me see how thick it is. It's not very thick, I don't think. It's 27 thousandths, so yeah, that's a lot right in here. On a guitar, the full length of a guitar, 12 thousandths is about all you want. You don't want any more than that. So on a mandolin, you pretty much want them flat. And when you've got that much underbow, you got a problem. So that's the first thing we're going to start with, is to see if we can do anything with the truss rod. See what kind of truss rod it has in it. Maybe it's got one of those double acting truss rods and it's been adjusted the wrong way, which would force that in there. Why you ever need to force an underbow, I have no idea. The underbow pulls in there pretty much naturally from the strings. A little loose. Hopefully one of these will fit this. Yep, this one fits it pretty good. Let's see if it'll turn. Trying to tighten it, it won't tighten. Let's see if I can loosen it. It seems to loosen a little bit, so somebody has turned it the correct way. So it was not turned backwards, and it seems to be a single acting truss rod, which is good. But it was as tight as it could go, just about. I'm going to tighten it up even maybe a little bit more. I got it just about as tight as I can get it. Yeah, on this side here, it's just a huge underbow right in here, right in this area. On the overall length down through the middle and on the base side, it's not quite so bad, but there's still underbow there. I can see it. Not nearly as bad, just a few thousandths on that. But here, it's still quite a lot. Yeah, I can still slide that in there. It is tighter than it was. Doesn't have room to spare like it did before. It just barely goes in there now, which that's an improvement. I don't know if I can tighten it anymore or not. I'm a little bit afraid to try. I'm going to use these pliers to turn this because my hands are just too sore. That's about all I would do. I don't think I'd go any tighter than that. That's pretty flat now. Now the only option we've got at this point is to file this flat. You know, you can try to keep cranking and cranking on these things, but I guarantee you you're going to break something if you keep cranking these, if you get them that tight. That's not their purpose. Their purpose is just to keep this straight, and that's as tight as you can reasonably expect to straighten that. And it looks much better than it did. It just still doesn't look 100% in this area right here especially. So the only option you've got is to lean on your file back here to take this tail down, because the tail flips up like this. Now, as hard as I've leaned on it there, and which is pretty hard, and I'm cutting up here already, but you can see these frets right here haven't been touched at all. Because these are being filed, these are being filed, this has nothing. So that'll tell you right there, there's a problem. And like I said, the best way to address it is just to file these frets back here really low, because you can't really play on these much anyway. The other way you can help it a little bit is file a little heavy towards both ends, like where you've got this, then that kind of sets it down, you know. But it doesn't, you can't do that much up here because this is too far from the problem area. The problem area is right in here. But you can still help it a little bit, and you might as well help it as much as you can. The only other thing you could do here would be to pull all the frets, cut the actual fingerboard down, and I don't really want to get into that if I don't have to, although that could be an option that we could explore if we have to. You know what? I think we're going to have to. It's when I get down here and come back, these are just hitting the back of this. You can just feel it bumping. It's going up each one of those frets. So I don't think we've got many options here. I think we really do need to pull these frets take this fretboard down in this area, plane it down, whatever it takes, put the frets back in because they're just high. From right here back, it's just high. Trying to put this into perspective, you know, if you had, you know, a 30 thousandths underbow, which is about what we have right here, if you had that in the full length of a guitar neck, that would be pretty bad. Having it in a length of about 3 inches here, Caleb says, no, you actually have a ditch. And that's kind of what you have. You really do. It's pretty darn bad. I probably could still file it out, but these frets back here would almost be flat with the fingerboard. So I've decided to just cut my losses here, pull them out, fix it a little bit better way, even though it's going to take a little more time. One of the problems you don't understand about doing this is that if I lower the top of this fingerboard, then that means the slot is now shallower. That could really pose a real problem because it'd be almost impossible to deepen these slots with the binding around the edges. You know, I'm hoping I don't have to cut it down that much. I definitely have to cut it down though. Trying not to go any further than I have to, but I think I have to go this one more fret, even though that fret really wasn't filed. I think I have to go that far just to get it synced back up. Maybe one more even. Yeah, I don't know if you can see this in the camera or not. And now that I've got the frets off, it probably doesn't show up as much, actually. But from here to about here, there's a pretty steep angle, and then it flattens back out. It's mostly on this side. This side's not quite as bad. So I've got my little toothed plane here. That's the first thing I'm going to start with because it might cut this without creating too much of a problem. One thing I can kind of do is look at it like this. In fact, this shows it up pretty good. You can see there's a pretty big gap here, and then there's no gap here at the end. At least I can see it from this side because the light's shining through this way. You probably can't see it like I can. Definitely that shows the angle problem. I'm afraid this is gonna make these slots really shallow, and that could be a real problem. Now there's a gap, and the gap's fairly consistent. It's a little bit high right in here. Check it really close all the way while I've got it off of here, because now's the time. This would be the main reason why you cannot get the strings down low enough on this mandolin. I'm trying to do it so that you don't notice it too much in the binding. A long taper here, like you wouldn't want it to be real abrupt. You know, if you look at it close, you can kind of tell that the binding's getting a little bit thinner back here. Oh, that looks so much better. Looking down it by eye now, it just looks so much better. I'm going to really give it one real close eyeball here before I decide I'm right. Actually, I've got a high fret right there still. This last fret is high. It's rocking on that. You can probably see that it's flexing here in the middle, so it's still riding high on this fret. Probably ought to pull that one too, unfortunately. Honestly, this fret's still a little bit high too, because the reason for that is there's still some underbow in this area. Most of it was right here, don't get me wrong, but there's still some in this area. I think we can live with that. We can probably file out that difference, so I'm going to keep it right where it is. Okay, so now I'm going to have to do some heavy-duty sanding here to try to level this all out. So I got some 220, and Let's see if we can't get rid of all the little planing marks. I don't know if you can tell, but because this is a radius, I'm also rotating this. So I'm trying to keep the radius, same way as when I carved it, I'm trying to keep the radius in there. I'm not carving it flat. The good news is we're going to fix the problem with the straightness. The bad news is we're actually even making the neck angle lower by doing this. Not so much the neck angle, but it's going to show up as the neck angle being even lower. So we're going to need an even lower bridge once we set the action down that low. Got most of the marks out of there, but there's still some there, so I'll do some more sanding off camera. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm satisfied. Not sure this is going to show up very well for you, but I'm trying to put the light behind this so that maybe you can see now that the gap is fairly straight across there. Before, this was actually, sitting on the actual end of the fretboard. Keep in mind, the rest of this is on frets, so there should be a gap there the same height as the frets all the way back. Now there is, or pretty close to it. Before, it was pretty bad. I think I'm going to try to put the frets back in it, but first I'm going to clean out each and every slot to the maximum that I can clean it out, because we're going to have to drive these frets back down in there, and this is much thinner now than it used to be. My weapon of choice for cleaning out fret slots is pretty much always my X-Acto knife. I put it in and use the back of the blade kind of like as a scraper, or I lift the dirt out of there with the back of the blade, let's just say it that way. Get all the glue and the junk that might be in there out so that the fret itself can go down in there as deep as possible. These look like they're going to be plenty deep. I think we got lucky there, because it can definitely be an issue, but I think these are more than deep enough. This fret is obviously had glue in it. I can see the glue popping out. Now it's going to be a challenge getting these frets back in there, quite honestly. Or maybe not. I just pushed that one in by hand and I think it's in there pretty good. Yeah, they're not following the arch. That's the problem here. So I'm probably going to have to actually put a little bit of a radius in these frets before I put them in the slot, or they're not going to stay down. We may have to glue each one too, but that's okay. But the ends have to stay down. I'm going to go through and get all these back in there, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Got all the frets in there. They look pretty good. I am going to wick them all down with a little CA glue. Problem with this is that it goes everywhere. I think it has to be done. I'm going to try to get it all off of there for the most part. I'll hit it with the accelerator. That should be good to go. Just looking down it, it looks way better. I would say improved by, 95%. I would like to say 100%, but honestly, there is just the faintest hint of a upturn still. But it's just a hint now compared to just a ski ramp before. It's pretty darn good, definitely a lot better than it was. Like I said, that's the good news. Now this is all fairly flat and we can level it and get the string action low. The bad news is this has to go even lower now. Yeah, it's good and bad. It's a pretty flat neck. I don't know that I've seen one quite as flat on another Eastman before. In fact, I'm going to look at it because now that I'm looking at it, I'm seeing little wrinkles right here, and it looks like this has come loose around here before. I bet you somebody's repaired this neck. If you look at it really close, you can probably see what I'm talking about. Right, this line right here, and it looks like there's a gap right here where this has been filled, and that would change the neck angle quite a bit. Yep, that's my guess. The neck angle has changed on this, because I haven't seen one like this from the factory that I recall. Yeah, I'm like 99% sure something's happened to the neck on this. That's probably the reason. More than likely, now that I think about it, more than likely that's what caused this here, because this came up, this stayed where it was, so it put a big underbow right here. Now we're really getting down to the meat of the story. That's the problem. That doesn't look loose anymore, and I don't think I'd want to break it loose to fix it. That may just be the way it's going to be. I'll look at it some more and see if there's any other ideas I can come up with, but right now that's the way it's going to be. Okay, now that I've got them all CA glued back in there, it's time to level them all off again. It feels way better already. I mean, it was impossible to level the way it was. I am really 100% convinced that the problem with this mandolin, including this problem, was because this neck has come loose and been repaired. I am 99.9% sure of that. My guess is, now this is just a pure guess, my guess is the customer probably bought this used from someone who was basically getting rid of a bill of goods here. Having said all that, I still think we can make a pretty decent player out of this. To really make the best out of it, we'd almost have to break the neck joint again and try to repair the angle. But I don't know if that's possible. No telling what they used to glue it back with. But that explains the deep dip right here for sure. That neck coming up would cause a real deep dip right here. I think that's about as good as it's going to get. In all honesty, I'm still seeing a tiny bit of underbow right in this area. But it's very tiny, very minimal. Actually, you can kind of tell it because you can see the flex in the ruler right there in the middle. It's flexing right here because this is still a little bit low. But think how low it was before I did all that. I can set it up now, I believe, but boy, it's still a little bit on the funky side there. Okay, so I've got it all cleaned up. I've leveled all the frets, recrowned all the frets. I've even leveled in between the frets. Quite honestly, I forgot to sand them. I can feel them, they're a little rough. Since I've already cleaned the fingerboard, I'll use this method to smooth them out. What you don't see is that I have a million interruptions, and I get pulled from one thing to another, and therefore I get some things out of sequence every once in a while. And people say, use a checklist. A checklist for 19,000 scenarios? I don't think so. I'm using 600 here. The problem with this is that it's hard to get down to these frets. I may just have to do it this way until I get down to the bigger frets. The problem with this is it's going to leave marks on the fingerboard. more than I needed in that case. I put 2 or 3 drops on there, and 1 or 2 drops would have been plenty. Looks pretty nice. I think it's going to be fine. Now, assuming the neck joint holds, we'll set this thing back up. It's going to take quite a bit of work on that bridge though. So we'll work on that next. Bridge goes this way, I can tell by the strings. And I know that broken piece was on that end also. I think we're going to have to cut it down quite a bit. Yeah, it's just way high. I don't see the holes showing through yet. On this side, we're going to have to take this off to the point where the posts may actually show a little bit. This will lower down a little bit more yet. Let's see where we're at once we lower it all the way first, I guess, before we go any further. It won't be crazy high, but it's still going to be a little high. This isn't sitting flat either. Well, I think the best start would be to go ahead and put the antler saddle on here, because this is broken right across this hole. Then once I get the antler saddle fitted to this, then we'll work this down to the top and see where we're at from there. Believe it or not, that's an antler saddle. I just dyed it black, and the only reason I dyed it black was because this was dark on the back side here, and it was just discolored enough that it just looked funny. So I thought if I just make the whole thing black, it'll look fine. Strength-wise, it's perfectly fine. Sound-wise, it's perfectly fine. You know, I've had requests to make them black in the past. I've done it for a few people, but I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and make this one black just because it'll make it look more uniform, make it look better. But anyway, the problem with that is it's way high. The other one had been cut down so much that it was very thin. I hate to cut the saddles down this thin because it's very weak then when you cut them down this thin right here. But I may have to cut this one down some more in order to get the action down. Yeah, it's just not simple sometimes. You know, I always say you could throw a dog through there. Well, in this case, it could be a St. Bernard. I'm pretty sure it would fit. Probably 200 thousandths of an inch high right there, right now. Try to fit this in here, if it'll fit. I don't have much tension on these 2 strings, but I've come to enjoy having the string tension on there when I'm sanding like this. It puts the down pressure on there for me, and all I have to do is move it sideways. So, and I'm not moving it very far sideways, as you can see. I'm tempted to cut some off the bottom of the feet because it is fairly thick. The only negative of that is that it's a lot of work. Let's give it a shot and see what happens. The way I do this whenever I have to cut the feet off the bottom of a bridge is I try to hold the pencil in a steady position and just trace right along there, and then try to do the same thing on this side. Then I'll take it over to my spindle sander, and I'll just try to sand some of that off down to the line. So that's step number 1. Let's see how that turns out. I've cut the bottom of the feet way down. I'm putting it back on here, and I can tell for sure it's still going to be way too high. So I'm going to have to cut the saddle way down, even though I don't really want to. Yeah, the action's way, way, way high. I'm sure it won't even hold a pick, even way down here even. It's just crazy high. I've taken about as much off the feet as I feel comfortable doing. Gonna definitely have to take some off of the bottom of the saddle here. It's difficult to say how much. I just know I need quite a bit. So I'll get after that and see what happens. Got the bridge back on here after cutting the feet down, cutting some of the saddle down. Got it as low as it will possibly go. It's still not even holding the pick at the 7th fret. To me, if they'll hold the pick snugly at the 7th fret, that's good enough. It's nice if they'll hold it a little further back, you know, 9th, 10th fret, somewhere in there is pretty good. I've even had them hold it at the 12th fret and still be playable. We're not there yet on this one. It's almost at the 7th fret. It's actually about the 4th fret right now is where it's kind of holding it. So to me, it still needs to go quite a bit lower. Like I said, with the neck issues that it has right now, that doesn't look possible. I'm trying to see if this neck is still loose. I don't think it is. It doesn't appear to be. Just gonna probe around a little bit to see if I see anything. Doesn't appear to have a crack there. Now, I'm not going to try to force one. I don't know how close you can see this, but trying to show it to you here. You know, it's kind of like a crack, like this blade could almost go in there, except that it's full of stuff, like glue or something. It's definitely been a part right there. There's no question, and you can also see it in the seam right here where it's cracked, and here. And also they've cut the heel down here. They didn't get it back down, and so the heel was proud, and they filed that off to match this, you can tell. Anyway, the bottom line is that's what's caused the problem. I'm just not sure I can get it low enough to play well. I'm going to go ahead and cut some more off the feet, I think. I think I can get by with a little bit more. I didn't want to cut any more off, but you got to do what you got to do. You can see my marks there. In this case, I'm going to try to sand to the upper edge of that mark and try to do it as accurately as I can so that it'll keep fitting this top here. And I'm going to take this apart and take the adjusters off of it because they get in the way when you're trying to sand this because you can't lay it down flat. That's the one way you can kind of keep it square is by laying it down flat. Now I will be able to lay it down flat on the table and sand this off. I'm not going to film that. I'm just running it up against a spindle sander just to knock that down. I've knocked it down quite a bit more there, down to the pencil mark. I would say I took almost another 1/16 inch off, for sure a 32nd, probably almost a 16. I believe that's probably close enough. Looks pretty darn fine to me. Let's see if that improved it any. There's the 7th. Boy, it's almost grabbing it there. It's kind of holding it at the 6th, but not very well. So we've improved it. It was holding at the 4th before. It's almost holding it at the 7th. It kind of holds it at the 6th. Another option, which I don't normally use, is to actually file the grooves a little deeper because I just don't want to take much more off these feet. But in this case, I think filing the grooves a little deeper is probably a smart option. It's not my favorite way to do it. As I've said, you got to do what you got to do. It's kind of holding at the 7th there, but just barely. It's holding it okay at the 6th now, so that helped a little tiny bit. I think what I'm going to do, now that we've got it this close, is I'm going to go ahead and string it back up. You know, the tension on this may push the top down just enough to make a difference. I'm hoping the tension doesn't pull the neck up where it makes it worse. Let's string her up and see where we're at because we just won't know till we try. Got the strings on here and checking the action with my purple pick, which is about 40-some thousandths of an inch. Yeah, it's in the ballpark of being okay. There's the 7th fret, and it's kind of almost holding it there. It's really not, to be truthful. It holds it at the 6th fret pretty good, but even that's a little bit on the loose side. Right there is just about perfect for holding, and that's the 5th fret. I wish that was that way right here. I'd be happy with that. It's just a hair high. It's not crazy high anymore. You couldn't throw a St. Bernard through there anymore. You might be able to throw a Chihuahua through there though. Maybe we can help it a little bit more up here at the nut. The nut is just a just on the edge of being high. This slides in there without much friction. So I think we can help it a little bit up here, and I'm going to do that string by string, and that'll help this just a tiny bit also. I'm going to do that off camera, and then we'll show you what it looks like when we're done with that. I'd like to tell you that it was a lot better, but unfortunately it's about the same. It isn't much different. It will almost hold the pick at the 6th fret. It does hold it at the 5th, no problem. Almost at the 6th, not quite at the 7th. You know, if they'll hold it at the 7th, I usually consider that a pretty darn good setup. Prefer to have them hold it all the way back to about the 9th. And it's not crazy high above that. Don't get me wrong here. We're not talking a lot, but it is just a teeny bit high. To be perfectly truthful, it's just about the way I set up my own personal mandolins because I play hard. So this height is just about perfect for me. It's probably a little bit high for your average mandolin player. You know, could we get any more out of it back here? Possibly, but boy, it's getting kind of hard, really. I mean, I could still cut the saddle down some more, but boy, I hate to. I really think you lose a lot of strength there when you do that. But on the other hand, because this angle's not so steep, it's not pushing down as hard, we could probably get away with a little bit more off the bottom of these saddles. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and do that because I'd like to get the setup just as good as I can get it for the guy. Then I'll have to break the news to him that the neck joint is really the problem on this. So I marked 30 thousandths on this to take off. That'll reduce it by another 15 thousandths out there at about the 12th fret, which will help. But that's about as much as I feel I can do on this thing. So after this is done, I think we're done. I believe that's all I can do. I'm going to set it back up with that, and we're going to have to live with whatever that turns out to be. Well, there you have it. It's actually set up pretty darn well. It's not quite holding it like I want it to, but it's trying to hold it there. So I mean, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. You know, from where we started to where we are now, it's a night and day difference. I would think he'll love it. I adjusted it up here quite a bit. Not every single string, not every one of them needed it. I've set the intonation. So let's play it for you now and give you an after so you can hear what it sounds like now. So that plays nice. It's easy to note, really. Most people would probably think this is set up incredibly well. I mean, it really is set up very well. Don't get me wrong. I'm just being a little negative on it because I can't get it quite where I would typically get it. But it's still better than, you know, I would say 85% of the mandolins you'll find, just especially in a music store somewhere. I would say it's better than 90% of those. Maybe 100%. It's pretty nice. It's got some decent punch. It's going to have to settle into its new shape and size here that we've set it up to. But here's what it sounds like right now. Sounds pretty nice. It's got a pretty decent sound. It's going to get better as it, you know, these are brand new strings, so that on a mandolin, brand new strings is not necessarily a positive thing. They sound typically a little better after they're played in a little bit. Where on a guitar, they sound their best when they're brand new. Yeah, it's really pretty easy to play. I'm pretty positive he'll enjoy it. If he liked it before, he'll love it now. And as far as I can tell, I don't see the neck loosening up or anything. So whoever fixed it, you know, at least in terms of the glue, they held it pretty well. They didn't get it back down as tight as I would have gotten it had I been doing it, I don't think. I'm pretty sure I would have gotten that joint a little tighter. At least for now, it looks like it's going to hold. So my friends, I hope you enjoyed a look at this Eastman and this very unusual setup and the things we had to do to make this one work. But it does play really well now, and I would imagine it'll last this way for a very long time, assuming that the neck holds out. And I would think it will. It doesn't look like it's going to come loose as far as I can tell. Thank you so much for watching.